Hey, what's up? Hello, everyone. Welcome into Fantasy Filmball, the show where we turn movies into sports and sports into something we don't talk about here. My name is Matt.
My name is Dyl. You know what time it is. It's draft time, and I am ecstatic because I won our Films About Games draft last week by one vote. That is why we stress voting, because it comes down to such a close battle sometimes, and that brings us to a new draft this week. And in honor of a lot of film news going on right now, I mean, Beau is Afraid just came out, 2 hours, 59-minute runtime. Killers of the Flower Moon coming out at Cannes, about 3.5 hours long. I think that was the official confirmation. So we figured this draft, we shoot for 3+ hour runtimes. What are the best long movies of all time?
I've always heard it said that no good movie is too long and no bad movie is short enough, and these movies prove it. We are going to be picking some of the best 3-hour movies plus of all time. And honestly, this hurts my heart because I know that there's so many that I could pick that I won't be able to pick just because, oh my god, we only have teams of 5. But Dylan, you are first up. What are you going to pick first? I think I have an inkling what you're going to pick.
See, this is a tough draft because I think this is a draft where it pays to be that second and third pick. And I could cheat a little bit. I can see your background right now, and there's 2 movies there I want. However, I'm going to leave either one or both of those movies for you because I have to go with what many consider to be one of the greatest movies of all time, and that is The Godfather Part 2.
I actually thought you were going to do that. That's kind of what I was thinking you would do. I'm going to be honest, Dylan. I put Titanic up here as a decoy to try and throw you off on the first pick.
I mean, I am one of James Cameron's biggest fans. I'm sure if I pan this camera around, you could see a James Cameron poster of Avatar, but the first Avatar, it does not meet the 3-hour runtime mark. But yeah, Godfather Part 2, I think this is one of the greatest films of all time. Many other people do as well. I think it takes everything you have from the initial Godfather and elevates it to another level. The perfect example of what a sequel should be. But Matt, what is going to be your first super long movie?
I have to go with a movie that you haven't seen, shockingly. Dear Lord, Dylan, how have you not seen The Lord of the Rings: Return of the King, which is my first pick. I think that this is one of the greatest films of all time. It demands every second of its runtime, even though it has 10 different endings. This is a beautiful film, I think, is truly worthy of all of the hype around it. This is, I think, the best 3+ hour movie of all time. I think the extended cut of it is 4 hours. And I only watched the extended cuts because I am an extended cut elitist. But my second pick that I'm going to go with here is Schindler's List. I know I just said Lord of the Rings is the best of all time in this category, but I think I'm going to take that back and say Schindler's List is the best movie over 3 hours long. This movie makes me weep like no other. It is so beautifully made. It is so sensitive, and it is one of the most important stories that has ever been told. Maybe this should have been my first pick, actually.
Schindler's List, Godfather Part 2, those are the 2 I was debating between for my first overall pick. That's why I was like, I wish I had 2 and 3 because I probably could get both of those or this next movie I'm going to take and pair them together. And that movie is going to be the one, the only Titanic by James Cameron. This is the quintessential, what a blockbuster, what a long movie should be. This movie is 3 hours, 20 minutes, and it feels like it's an hour. This movie blows by. I keep saying it's just the perfect movie. You fall in love with Jack Dawson and Rose, and you just don't want to see him go. And it's very sad when he eventually does have to go. I think I will have to go. You said you're a big fan of director's cuts and extended editions, so give me one of those. Give me the extended edition of Apocalypse Now.
Actually, Dylan, I think I am going to challenge this. The reason I'm going to challenge Apocalypse Now is because the Apocalypse Now Redux and the Apocalypse Now Final Cut are not the versions of the movie that most people watched. You kind of have to seek those ones out. Whereas for some extended cuts, like if it's Blade Runner, for example, the one that everyone watches is the recut version. But I don't think that the one that's most widely accessible at this point of Apocalypse Now is over 3 hours.
Fair enough. Throwing the challenge flag, that works. You know what? For throwing that challenge flag, I'll take a pick that I think is very good, but is definitely too early here. So I'll, penalize myself a little bit and give me OJ Made in America.
Nice. That's a very good pick because I know that's one of your favorite movies of all time.
It is, and
you're doing a doc.
It is. That would be my next point. I get to take the doc this week. This is, I think, one of the best, if not the best, documentary of all time. Even if you have no knowledge of what the situation is about, it encapsulates you throughout its massive runtime, and you never feel not glued, not invested, not enthralled by this crazy story that is being depicted in front of you. But Matt, I took Titanic, I took OJ Made in America. What are your next two picks?
For my next pick, I'm going to have to go with Lawrence of Arabia. Got it back here. I won't take it out because it will knock over everything else, so I'm not going to do that. But Lawrence of Arabia is the epic of all epics. This is, I think, Steven Spielberg, maybe his favorite movie of all time. It's one that I know inspired Spielberg very heavily with some of his epics, including Indiana Jones. One of my dreams is to see this movie projected in IMAX 70mm. That's all I want, is to see Lawrence of Arabia in that screen. It is an incredible movie.
Lawrence is a great movie. I think it's a little too long, where the runtime does hurt it overall, but it's still a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, I would agree. At times, very close to the end, you start to feel the runtime. But overall, for me, I don't care. I love it so much. Now, for my fourth pick, I'm going to try and rectify my mistake of last week. Because my mistake last week was that I picked movies that I know are brilliant, movies that I think are the best of all time, but that might not have had wide popularity and wide appeal, right? The Seventh Seal, The King of Kong, Existenz, I think were all the right picks last week. But do they have the wide appeal of some other things? And that's why I'm going to go with something that I love, that I also know everyone has seen, and that is The Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah, Wolf of Wall Street, great movie, great runtime. It barely meets the cut. I'm pretty sure it's just over 3 hours, but hey, that's the rule here.
It is 3 hours on the dot.
So it makes the cut right away. You know, when you were mentioning a movie that, you know, is widely seen, but it hasn't got the correct, you know, reception so far, that brought my eyes to another movie that just came out this past year. And there's people who love this movie, there's people who hate this movie, but I'm one of them who loves it. Give me Babylon.
Okay, that's not one I'd pick.
I know it's not one that you would pick. Give me the controversial pick here, because this is a movie that some people adore, some people hate. I am one of the people who love this movie, and I'm going for a theme with my team. We have Godfather Part 2, one of the best movies of all time. We have Titanic, one of the biggest movies of all time. We have OJ, the best doc of all time. We have Babylon, just a major showcase. And, you know, there's two other movies on my honorable mention list I'll shout right here. Maybe you take one of them. There's Malcolm X. Very great film, but also suffers from the same thing that Lawrence of Arabia does for me. It's just a little too long. You feel that runtime when you get closer to the end of the movie.
Well, I don't.
There's a war movie that I don't think is a great movie, but when I was a kid, I watched this movie all the time, and that was Gettysburg. But for my last pick, we are going with the third highest grossing movie of all time, with Avatar: The Way of Water.
Nice. You got two very recent movies on there. But
Of course,
you gotta stan Avatar.
That may be my detriment here, taking two movies from the last year, but originally I was looking at Wolf of Wall Street and Way of Water here for these last two picks. You sniped Wolf of Wall Street, fair enough, but I'll take my risk with Babylon. You know, this is a movie that we just saw in our Oscar Madness, made a great run getting all the way to the Final Four, so there are people out there who love this movie, but, you know, like I said, there's people who don't like this movie. But Way of Water, I've stand this movie hard enough on this channel before.
So for my final pick, I am looking at a bunch of movies right now, and I'm just going to give shout-outs to a bunch of the ones that don't meet my criteria, because my criteria is that, for one thing, I have to love this movie. For another thing, it has to be popular, not just ranked as great, right? The Seventh Seal last week, that's a film that's ranked as great, but is it popular? I'm not sure. So, some films that I will not be picking. I will not be picking A Brighter Summer Day. I'm not going to be picking Once Upon a Time in America, which is one of the best gangster movies of all time. Likewise, not popular enough are Satan Tango and Showa. One of them runs 7 hours, one of them runs 9 hours. They are both incredible films that move me deeply, that I love, that I can watch the entire duration of without getting bored even a single time, even though that they are so long. I'm also not going to be picking RRR, which is one of my favorite movies of recent times, that is so fun, that is so demanding of its runtime, that flies by in such an entertaining way. Instead, I'm going to pick one of the movies that is both a classic, is frequently ranked in the top 10 films of all time, and is popular. It's a film that's in the IMDb top 10, and that's how I first watched Seven Samurai. Seven Samurai is the action movie. Without Seven Samurai, there is no MCU. That might be a good thing in some people's minds, but without Seven Samurai, there's no team-up movies. This is the ultimate team-up movie where half of the movie is spent following characters as they gather a squad together to take down the bad guy. And then we see them take down the bad guy, and it is glorious. It is so fun and thrilling. The action is incredible. This is a samurai movie at its very best. It is popular for a reason. I hope a lot of you guys out there have seen this movie. If not, what are you doing? Go watch it. It is, I think, still in the top 10 on IMDb's top 250 films. So if you haven't seen it, what are you doing? Go watch Seven Samurai. It's incredible. It is so worth the hype, and that's why it's my 5th pick on my team.
Dude, what are you doing? You talk about the MCU, take Endgame, man. It's 3 hours. It's great. It should be the number 1 pick in this draft. Like, what are we doing? Why didn't we take the MCU's magnum opus? But yes, Seven Samurai movie, yeah, I'm one of those losers who hasn't seen it yet, but it's high on my list. It's high on my list.
Every week on this show, you say you haven't seen a movie, and I go, Dylan, you should see that movie. And you go, I know. So, Dylan, you should see this movie.
Hey, I eventually got around to RRR, so I'll eventually get around to this stuff as well. It's just, I don't like watching stuff at home, but I eventually have to learn to watch stuff at home.
It's true. Seven Samurai is going to be worth it. Just isolate yourself for 3.5 hours. Watch it. It is one of the best action movies that has ever been made. Now to wrap up this draft, my team consists of The Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, Schindler's List, Lawrence of Arabia, The Wolf of Wall Street, and Seven Samurai.
And on the flip side, I used the first overall pick to take The Godfather Part 2. I followed that up with Titanic and OJ Made in America, and lastly had Babylon and Avatar The Way of Water. Make sure to go out there, vote on the YouTube community tab. Please have your voice heard, because as we saw this past week, our draft came down to a 1 vote difference. We have some very fun, very interesting drafts coming up, so you definitely don't want to miss that. But until next time, my name is Dyl.
And my name is Matt, and this is Fantasy Filmball.